All right, Thursday is here. Week 10 is upon us, and there is a lot of college football that we're going to have to be talking about today. We have got some games we need to break down, including Alabama versus LSU, which this could go a long ways into helping Alabama attempt to make the college football playoffs. Now, there are certainly other games we're going to have to talk about that Alabama must win in order to get there, but there's no doubt, considering where the committee ranked LSU, this is one that the committee will value. We need to move forward from that. We need to talk about Oklahoma's game this weekend in what could be the last bedlam in quite a while. And this is going to be interesting. A lot of people are asking the question, could Oklahoma be on upset alert? And this is a question we're going to discuss today. On top of that, we have got to hit the Michigan news. This is something I haven't talked about here on the channel. It's something I've refrained from talking about because so much is coming out so rapidly, and I don't really know what to think of all of it, to be honest with you. So today we're going to, for the first time on the channel, dive into all of the Michigan news, all of the stuff that's been coming out there, and kind of give my general reaction on it. As y'all are hopping in here, be sure to like down below, hop down to the comments. Let me know what you're excited for this weekend. Let me know which games you're most excited to see. With that being said, we're going to jump right into this. And I'm going to start with the Alabama versus LSU game because this is going to be a massive matchup within the SEC. Georgia, Missouri is this weekend as well. We're going to touch on that game. But Alabama, LSU is probably the premier game in the SEC this weekend because it goes so far in helping Alabama's case in the event they attempt to make the college football playoffs. LSU might have the best offense in all of college football. This is something that I don't think is a hot take. At the very least, even if you disagree that they don't have the best offense of college football, I think everybody would agree at the very worst that they're a top 10 unit in the nation in terms of what they can do offensively. Now, defensively, we're having a much different conversation about the capabilities of the Tigers, especially this year. And this is a unit where we're used to talking about the DBU moniker at LSU. It's nowhere to be seen right now. LSU is really struggling on the defensive side of the football. They have one of the worst defenses in the nation, and this is something Alabama can look to try and exploit. The question is, can Alabama slow down that really, really powerful LSU offense? And I think Alabama is equipped to slow down this offense. And let's start up front because there has been a name emerge for the Alabama Crimson Tide that if you're a Crimson Tide fan, you're really excited about. And that's Tim Keenan on the interior of that defensive line, who is playing as well as anybody on that defense. Now, the reason why Tim Keenan is such a big deal goes back to another name we've talked about frequently here on the channel, and that's Jaheim Oatis. Because with Jaheim Oatis moving from defensive lineman to defensive end, they're now allowed to play both Oatis and Tim Keenan at the same time with Justin Aboigbe out there and Chris Braswell and Dallas Turner. And that is a ferocious defensive front. I think that this weekend we're going to see the linebacker rotation settle in on Jahad Campbell and Deontay Lawson. I think those are your two guys. When I look at the sideline capabilities of those two guys right there, I think they give Alabama the best chance to win, especially when we're talking about an LSU offense that's going to test your athleticism. LSU may not have a traditional power run rush attack, but they don't need it this year. They have a rush attack that's complementing what Jaden Daniels is doing both with his legs and with his arm. And at the end of the day, that's what you're trying to do, is play complementary football. And that's exactly what their rushing attack allows them to do, is just take pressure off of Jaden Daniels. So Alabama having those athletic linebackers, that's going to be huge. Last year, Jaden Daniels killed the Tide with his legs. This year, I think Alabama may be a little bit better equipped to stop that because I do like the athletic capabilities of the inside linebackers on this Crimson Tide team better than last year's Crimson Tide team. And then we get to the secondary. Alabama is in a lucky position because they are one of the few teams in the nation that can genuinely look up and say, we boast a top 10 tandem. And I truly believe they do, not once, but twice on this defense. I think they have two of the best cornerbacks in the nation in Kool-Aid McKinstry and Terrion Arnold. And then I think they have two of the best edge rushers in the nation in Dallas Turner and Chris Braswell. Both of those names right there, all four of them, they're going to be big in this game. The cornerbacks, it goes without saying. Alabama asked their defensive backs to play a lot of man coverage, and going up against this LSU offense, you're going up against some of the best wide receivers in the nation being thrown to by one of the best quarterbacks in our game. So those cornerbacks, they're going to have their work cut out for them. And these LSU wide receivers are very talented. But I also think that the Safety play right now for Alabama is really starting to turn a corner, and it's starting to be elite. And don't get me wrong, it was never bad. It's just that you had one safety who was in his first year in Alabama's system and was a transfer. You had another safety that was a true freshman. Obviously, he was a first year in the system. He's a true freshman. Well, those guys are learning. Those guys have learned. And now they're playing high level football. And so you look at Alabama's secondary, they have two corners who are probably going to be first round draft picks. They have two safeties that are playing real well right now. And you ask who the nickel is. Well, that's none other than Malachi Moore, who is back to that Malachi Moore that so many Alabama fans were hoping for. And then he had that bag injury. Now he looks to be back fully healthy. Then you have Amos, if you really need to get funky in that secondary. So Alabama has got a lot of names in this secondary, Amos being one of the top-rated cornerbacks in the transfer portal from Louisiana, making his way to the Crimson Tide. This Alabama secondary has the name, and it's going to be so much fun watching the matchup between these LSU wide receivers and the Alabama secondary, because I can promise you this, NFL scouts everywhere, they're going to be keyed in on that matchup. They're going to be watching that matchup closely because a lot of those guys are going to be playing on Sundays. That's how talented and exciting of a matchup this is. But the biggest task for Alabama's offense, and I don't think it's close, is making sure Jaden Daniels doesn't overwhelm you, because this is a guy that's got a lot of ability. Whenever we look at Jaden Daniels, he's manipulating defenses and he's winning the Tigers a lot of these games because this LSU defense, it's just not there, right? We can talk about the inadequacies and the inconsistencies of Alabama's offense up to this point, but if we're having that conversation, especially in relation to this game right here, we must also include LSU's defense has not been good. And whenever we talk about LSU's defense not being good, and then we talk about this game in particular, we have to then talk about one of the best defensive players they have, Wingo. He's out for the season, unfortunately, due to injury. Then we look at their secondary, a secondary that has not been good all year. They are also really hurt, really injured. They have two guys that were really exciting gets for the LSU fan base, and Denver Harris and another individual who are not playing. And if I'm not mistaken, they're going to be moving one of their safeties to cornerback to try and alleviate some of the pressure. So this LSU secondary, not only have they not been playing well all year, that was when they had their starters. Now you're talking about a really depleted defense. And even then, even though that defense is so depleted, this is still a really tough game because of the offense LSU fields, because I truly believe at the very worst, it's a top 5 offense in the nation. So this is a huge game for Alabama. I think Alabama has the ability to win this game because ultimately, I believe Alabama can get a few more stops than I believe LSU's offense can get. And if we're asking what Alabama has been phenomenal at this year in terms of offensive capabilities, it's the deep shot. Alabama's deep shot is one of the best in all of college football right now. Jalen Milroe is hitting that at elite levels, and Alabama's wide receivers, they're getting open downfield. Right? Last year, we had all these conversations about Alabama's wide receivers not gaining separation. That's not the conversations we're having this year. The wide receiver play at Alabama has been pretty darn good up to this point. And there's still a lot of names to go now. That's the scary thing. Alabama can test LSU deep. LSU has been susceptible to the deep attack all year long. That's what Alabama does really well. And one of their best defensive lineman is no longer in the game, and their cornerback room is absolutely decimated. Alabama will look to test LSU deep. So when Alabama needs to move the ball, I think they have the recipe to, but I also think they're going to try and slow it down. Jalen Milroe is the most athletic quarterback that LSU has played up to this point. Last week against Tennessee, we finally started to see the offensive coordinator, Tommy Rees, start implementing some creativity within this offense. And if you implement the creativity in the offense, you alleviate some of the pressure on Jalen Milroe. The eye candy does some of the work for your young quarterback. And that's what ultimately Alabama's got to do. So this is a game everybody needs to be watching. Because if you're wondering how the college football playoffs could turn out, though Alabama still has multiple tests in front of them if they get over LSU, there's no question. The committee values LSU. The committee believes that this LSU offense is one of the most potent units in all of college football. That's why they're ranked this high, with a defense that's been non-existent and having dropped some games. That's why they're ranked this high. So for Alabama, this is an unbelievable opportunity. This is a great opportunity. This is exactly what you ask for if you're the Crimson Tide, having dropped one game, having had inconsistent games, but looking like you're turning a corner at the best time. Alabama's defense has found themselves. They are playing great. If Alabama's offense matches, they're going to be a tough team to stop because of the talent they have. Really tough. So if Alabama beats LSU, they then look ahead. They have Kentucky, they have Auburn, they have Chattanooga, and then they'd go to the SEC championship game against Georgia. Alabama's fate is completely within their control if they beat LSU. And that's why this game is so big. The committee values LSU. Alabama gets a big time win if they down LSU, and then they have a few more games before the SEC championship game. And if Georgia continues to win out, they would face Georgia, who the committee ranks as a top 5 team. At that point, Alabama would have ranked wins against a top 15 team, Ole Miss. They'd have a ranked win against LSU. They'd have, if Tennessee is still ranked, which I don't know that I believe they will be. So if Tennessee is not ranked, we can't count that as a ranked win. Point being, then they'd have a top 5 win over Georgia. It'd be real tough to keep Alabama out in that instance because they would have a lot of ranked wins. They'd have lost to a Texas team that was probably ranked as a top 15 team. So they'd have multiple top 15 wins, a top 15 loss. It'd be tough. But I don't envy the committee this year, ladies and gentlemen, because there's a scenario where it gets real hairy, real fast, and it's going to be a lot of fun. There's going to be a lot of outrage. Personally, I'm just here to watch it all burn. So let's hit some comments real fast. Anthony in here saying, yo, Ty, happy you're here. Anthony. Steven says, Ty, wipe my feet also. Thank you for the Shady Mile. Thank you for the Shady Mile, Steven. Speaking of, thank you to Shady Mile for being a sponsor of the channel. Very, very pleased with this deal. Very pleased with Shady Mile, and I'm very glad y'all are enjoying it. Everybody that I've had try it has enjoyed the product, and ultimately that's what matters the most to me, that you guys are enjoying it because it's at a great price point. I think it's a good product, and if y'all are happy with it, then that makes me even happier. Anthony says, and people forget and been saying this for a while, losing Dave Aranda and Corey Raymond. Oh, no doubt. No doubt, Anthony. I mean, you're talking about 2 guys that were instrumental in constructing and maintaining the DBU moniker, right? Nick Saban gets there, really instills DBU, and then Raymond, Dave Aranda, instrumental in being able to maintain it. No doubt about it. When Aranda and Raymond were at LSU, they were running a ton of man-to-man defenses, and it seems like safeties and corners are successful. They really can't run zone. Yeah, listen, LSU always wanted to be that aggressive defense, much like Alabama, much like a Georgia, where that's why this weekend's going to be so much fun. Even if you're not a fan of LSU, even if you're not a fan of Alabama, watch the game. I'm not joking. You're going to get an NFL matchup on a college football field. Terry and Arnold, Kool-Aid McKinstry against those LSU wide receivers. That's going to be an NFL matchup on a college football field, and that's something I personally cannot wait to see. I mean, that's just going to be an unbelievable treat for everybody involved. So yeah, that's a huge game. No doubt about it, man. No doubt about it. Let's talk about the Michigan news real fast because I haven't talked about it at all on my channel. I've abstained from talking about it. And the reason is quite simple. It's because every day something new comes out. And whenever we have situations like this where every day something new comes out, I think it's because of me working in law firms. Maybe it's my moot court background, or maybe it's my debate background. I sit here and I think to myself, I want to wait for the dust to settle. I want to wait for the dust to settle because right now we are in the zone of absurdity with all of the things that are coming out about Michigan and the scandal. But we've also reached a point of peak goofiness. And this is where, even though things keep coming out, I now must insert myself into this conversation. Because it's so goofy now that Ty's here to patrol. Ty's here to police the goofiness. So let's talk about this. I've seen a lot of takes out there. And first and foremost, I think it is very important and prudent that we have this conversation under the assumption that everything we're talking about are accusations and speculation. Because until something is actually proven, they're just that. It's accusations and speculation. Now, if that's him at the Central Michigan game, that's not an accusation nor a speculation. You got caught in 4K. But the larger scandal here is still in the realms of accusations and speculations. Now, there's a lot of accusations. There's a lot of speculations. And these accusations and the speculations are coming from some major places. So do I think that they have some bearing of truth to it? Possibly. I mean, where there's smoke, there's fire, right? I mean, that much is simple. I think we could all agree about that. To the varying degree, we'll find out. I also hear this take a lot that sign stealing it just happens in college football. And to that, I don't doubt it. I don't doubt that. The question is, are you picking up signs during the course of a game? Or are you having a guy go out, write a manifesto, and spend that much money scouting and doing things not during the course of your game? Because one of those things is illegal, the other isn't. And I understand it can seem like a hairline difference, but at the same time, it's not. It's really not. I'll put it to you like this. Drinking a nice glass of Shady Mile is not illegal if you are of the legal age. You can enjoy your glass of Shady Mile in your house. You can have too much Shady Mile in your house. Enjoy your evening. Watch the World Series last night. Either be very happy your team won, be very sad your team lost, or be very happy that you got to sit back and watch an unbelievable sporting event. It's not illegal for you to drink a bit too much of your Shady Mile in your own home. Now go out into the street and start screaming. Now you've broken a law. Well, the crux of both issues is that you had too much to drink, but there are nuances within society that are important. Much like this Michigan case. It is not illegal to sign steal. How did you go about doing all of this? That's the nuanced conversation we're trying to have here. And when we listen to coaches talk about the degrees that Michigan went to, we hear them say, that doesn't happen. Bob Stoops talked about this. He said, that doesn't happen. Not like that. If it does, I don't know about it. Nick Saban talked about it. Nick Saban didn't say too much. He just said, I don't know much about it. He said that when he was in the NFL, sign stealing was a big thing. And then they implemented the microphones and the helmets. That pretty much all solved it. So Saban was like, why don't we just do that here? Listen, I have no doubt that almost all of your big schools have someone on staff that is just there watching that team, trying to piece together their signs. I have no doubt that there are 3 or 4 or 5 people on any one of these major staffs, any one of these teams that are really vying for the college football playoffs, any of your really top 20 teams. They probably have a guy doing that during the game. And that is the distinction that must be made here. During the game. So let's talk about some of the wild takes I've seen, right, from this Michigan sign stealing scandal. One of them came down either late last night or just this morning. I can't remember whether or not I saw it when I woke up this morning or whether it was late last night when I was in my just inability to sleep stupor at about 3 o'clock in the morning. Neither here nor there. However, a bunch of the coaches within the Big Ten have penned a letter asking the Big Ten to do something about Michigan, to levy some sort of punishment. Until you provide concrete evidence, Michigan can't be punished, in my opinion. Right? Like you do have to prove their guilt before we just levy down punishments. You can't just say, oh, I think we got him. And I understand there's a lot of accusations going around right now. They must be proven. They must be proven. Now, people are asking, what's the NCAA going to do? The NCAA is useless. Let's be honest. And I say that halfway facetiously. Of course, the NCAA should do something. But when we look at the power structure of the NCAA right now, and especially where they're concerned with Congress trying to help them out in any way, shape, or form they can. That way the Supreme Court doesn't hit them over the head with an antitrust suit the second it gets in front of the Supreme Court's desk. I mean, the NCAA has got a bigger fish to fry right now than Michigan, quite frankly. They're worried about their very existence moving forward. Because even though that conversation, and I talk about it all the time, with Justice Kavanaugh stating your entire existence is suspect, you cannot have the basic theory that you're not going to pay your employees a fair market wage on the theory that you don't have to, that doesn't fly. It breaks all the antitrust laws. The court, I've said this so many times, they are signaling they are willing to hear the case, talking about the very existence of the NCAA and its legality as it pertains to major college athletics. They're willing. They're willing. It is only a matter of time. So the NCAA, that's why you see them at Congress. They're trying to have Congress pass a law. And then, listen, that will be a Band-Aid until someone challenges that law on its legality. And then we go from there. This is just to paint the picture. The NCAA has been inept up to this point. I don't exactly think that I trust the NCAA to do much here. The Big Ten, that's a different story. But I also don't think that the Big Ten should do a thing until concrete evidence is proven and given. Now, if the Big Ten receives concrete evidence that, yes, these accusations are true, punish them. However you see fit, punish them. I'm not the judge, jury, nor the executioner. I'm not going to say what I think they should get. It's not my place to say what I think they should get. And quite frankly, I'm not well versed in terms of NCAA violations off the top of my head. Right? Like, I don't exactly know a long list of NCAA violations that would help me set precedent for what the punishment should be. Because quite frankly, off the top of my head, the NCAA seems to be all over the place with their punishments and the way they levy them. Doesn't seem to be any sort of logical consistency there. That's neither here nor there. But if the accusations are true, of course Michigan should be punished. The other crazy take I've seen, and I must admit, one of them came from someone who I've largely agreed with what a lot of they said. The other day, Coach Prime was talking about this and said, you still got to stop them. You're not wrong, Coach Prime, but this is the exact same thing that really frustrated me with Dabo Swinney's response the other day. Now, that being said, I do think Dabo Swinney was right to get after Tyler from wherever the hell he was from. Because, okay, we can have this conversation as grown men, respectfully, right? Like, Dabo returned the energy he got. That's neither here nor there. The point I'm trying to make here is this. You're hiding nuance behind a truth. And what I mean when I say that is, yes, Coach Prime, it is true that you still have to go out and stop the play. That's true. Much like, yes, Dabo, it is true that just a few years ago you were winning national championships. And it is true that you were one of the most successful programs of the past 2 decades. True. But what is the deeper nuance here? In the case of Clemson, yes, Dabo, why are we here now, though? It's because of your inability to adapt. It's because of your inability to accept change. It's because of your inability to use the transfer portal. So while, yes, it is true that you just led one of the most successful campaigns in college football, why are we where we are currently at? It's because of your inability to adapt. And therefore, the question is legitimate. Even though you can hide behind the truth of, but 2 years ago, look what I did, and look what I did before we got here. Yes, but look at what you are doing now. And it is your inability to change that is directly resulting in diminished results. So the question is valid. And then we go over to how Coach Prime answered this. And I understand, Coach Prime, you are right. The truth is yes, you do have to still stop it. But damn, is it easier to stop something when you know it's coming. I'm going to give y'all an example because one of the things that I talk about here all the time, one of the things I do here on the channel all the time is I will give you examples. And the reason why I've always done this, both in debate, both in moot court, and in analysis such as this, is because I am removing for both myself and you, because you don't know how many examples I've given myself before I've came here. I'm trying to remove all bias, all subconscious innate bias one may have about the situation, and get you to logically look at a separate situation, but the logical consistency and the logical games we're playing are one-to-one. You'll understand what I'm saying. Yes, Coach Prime, you still have to go out there and stop them. But I want you to imagine that I need you to get to Dallas, Texas. and I drop you off in the middle of a cornfield and God knows where. You've never been there. You don't know where you are. All you know is you have a Ford Escape. It's a lot easier to get to Dallas when you have the navigation system, isn't it? Yeah, because you know where to go. Now, if I remove the navigation system, you may still get to Dallas. If you figure out if you are north of Dallas, east of Dallas, south of Dallas, west of Dallas, you may still get to Dallas. You could. Damn, it's a lot harder to get to Dallas now. And I've seen this take not only from Coach Prime, I've seen other coaches say it. I've seen multiple people say it. But you still got to stop them. Yeah, you might know the sign. You still got to stop them. It's a lot easier to get to your destination when you're in unfamiliar territory when you have navigation. Take away navigation. Watch chaos ensue. So the whole point of, but it's easier you still got to stop them. Yeah, no, you do still got to stop them, bud. Great point. If I put you in a submarine in the middle of the ocean, you still got to breathe. It's a lot easier to breathe in that submarine than if I took you out of the submarine at 100 feet deep. Now try and breathe. Yeah, both require you to breathe. One of them's a whole lot easier to do. So I've been completely lost in that response. You still have to stop them. Thank you. Thank you. You might as well have told me, hey, pal, just so you know, on this all of Thursday mornings, you still have to breathe to survive. Thank you. Never would have known that. Never would have known that. Of course you still have to stop them. That's a non-issue here. It is a lot easier to stop something when you know it's going to come. A few years ago, and I forget the opponent, so I'm not even going to try and guess, Alabama played somebody, and one of the linebackers for Alabama said, hey, if you actually watched their offensive linemen, they aligned differently in run sets as they did when they were in pass sets. So we knew, or we had a good guess when they were running or passing. You went back and watched it on film. I'll be damned. It's right there. When they were in their run sets, they were lined up as an offensive line consistently different than when they did their pass sets. The linebacker for Alabama said, yeah, when we realized that in the first quarter, it made everything a lot easier. That was just figuring out a minute detail. Now I want you to figure out, not only it's a pass set, you're picking up on the route combos. Yeah, you still got to stop it. It's a lot easier to stop when you know where it's going and what's coming. So that's a take that's really confused me from people who I think give unbelievable takes all the time too, all the time. And I would love to talk to somebody who has that take, right? Like if somebody does have that take, I'd love to talk to them because maybe I'm missing something here. Maybe this isn't an experience thing, and I'm perfectly willing to learn. But I also think it goes without saying, yeah, you still got to stop them. But if you know they're running a quarterback draw or you know they're running a halfback counter, it becomes far easier to stop that than when you're completely left guessing. So this whole conversation has really been perplexing to me. Once again, we're operating under the assumption that these are accusations and speculations and that nothing is concrete. That's why I haven't said that Michigan needs to be punished, because we don't know what's true or not yet. And until that happens, punishment shouldn't be levied. So this is a wild situation, ladies and gentlemen. I mean, this is truly something that we are going to be talking about for a while, because every day that comes out, I message in our group chats and I say, I feel like I'm getting memed on. Like, I just feel like at a certain point, this is just a meme. And it's not. This is very real. So, something we have got to watch. We're going to move forward because we might have to get out of here a bit early today. They're doing work out on the street here in a little bit. So, God help my ears. OU needs to bounce back. Oklahoma's got a big game this weekend. And whenever I've looked out, one of the things I've noticed, I've seen some people putting OU on upset alert this weekend. So, first and foremost, that's the question we're going to answer. Is Oklahoma on upset alert this weekend? I'm going to go ahead and rip the Band-Aid off. I don't believe so. Now, I think this is going to be a tough game. And I was watching Oklahoma State this morning before I came on here, really tasking myself with finding a way where Oklahoma State could put OU in upset contention, because I've seen that take from so many people. And I'm like, okay, well, if people are seeing this, they may see something. And I do see some things that I think could give OU trouble. The problem is, I don't know that I see something that would give OU problems over 4 quarters enough to cause them to lose back-to-back games. Let me start with where I see Oklahoma State having something that is interesting and could test Oklahoma. And it revolves around Gordon. The young man is awesome. He's so good. But it's not solely about Oklahoma State. What is the health of Danny Stutzman? Now, understand, I like the linebacker depth behind Danny Stutzman in terms of athletic ability. You have Kip Lewis, you have Kobe McKenzie, Kanak out there. You have got a lot of guys out there. But Danny Stutzman, that's your leader. That's your quarterback on your defense. That's the guy that has the experience. So inevitably, that's the name you want to be there, especially when you're talking about a Brent Venables defense that is inherently aggressive. That's the beauty of Brent Venables' defenses. That's why I am such a fan. He's aggressive. He pins his ears back and he says, go. I like that, right? Venables is one of those coaches, almost like a Dan Lanning, where you live by the sword, you die by the sword. I got a lot of respect for that. I must admit, I do. I know that after that Dan Lanning Washington game, everybody was like, boo, boo, you made a lot of bad decisions. That's Dan Lanning. He's going to be bold. He's going to go for it, and he's going to put faith in his team. And if that's my biggest complaint about you, is that you gamble and you put faith in your team, I understand you might lose you some games. If I'm a player, I'd rather lose a game because my coach put faith in me and thought, hey, y'all can go out here and win this, and then it just didn't work out, as opposed to my coach coaching scared. Basically telling me by his play calls, I don't believe you can do this. Right? Both could be a loss. I think one of those sits a little bit differently with a team where, yeah, you go back in hindsight 2020, Dan Lanning, those weren't good play calls. I love that, though. And Venables can be a bit like that with his defensive play calling. He lives by the sword. He dies by the sword. He likes to blitz a lot, and I love it. I love it. I do. I think that's why you see Oklahoma's defense, they can get caught in 20-20. But when they get down to the red zone, oh boy, it gets tough. Oh boy, it gets tough. Because 20-20, Venables is gambling. Yeah, you might get caught and they might bust a big gain, but when they get down into the red zone, all of a sudden, those gambles heavily favor Venables because the field is shortened, right? That's just the nature of that aggressive Venables defense. But the reason why Danny Stutzman is so key here, Oklahoma State runs a lot of screens. They run a lot of screens. And that young man, Ollie Gordon, he's very good. He is very, very good. The reason why I bring up the Venables aggression and Stutzman being questionable, if you're Oklahoma State and you know you're playing against a defensive coordinator that's one of the brightest minds in the game of football in terms of understanding his side of the ball, and Venables is, there's no questions here. There's no debate here. You know he's aggressive. You're going to try and take advantage of that aggression. Right? You're going to take advantage of that aggression. One of the ways you can do that is with screen passes. And I think we're going to see a healthy dose of the screen pass from Oklahoma State. Now, this is what I meant when I started this segment off. I think there's something that Oklahoma State has that they can test OU with, but I don't think it's enough over the course of 4 quarters. I'm not moved by saying you're going to win a football game with the screen pass. I will understand, back up, and agree with the analysis. Hey, in the early stages of the game, you can really take advantage of an aggressive defense with some screen passes and then mix something up. But if you don't have much to offer outside of that, that gets much tougher, much tougher, much, much tougher. And I've watched Oklahoma's defense hem up one of the most talented running backs in the nation. out there at Texas, Brooks, where Brooks still had a good game, right? I mean, he's a very talented running back. He's probably going to get his. He's great. He's going to be so much fun to continue watching as he continues to progress in college football. Point being, OU was able to mitigate the damage Brooks was able to do. Ollie Gordon's a very talented running back, but I've watched OU's defense against a very talented running back. They answered the call in a rivalry game. This, too, is a rivalry game. And I know Oklahoma fans don't like when I say that. And in fairness to Oklahoma fans, if I was an Oklahoma fan, I could understand the contention with calling this a rivalry game. Understand, I look at any game where there's more on the line than simple wins and losses as a rivalry game. So there's bragging rights. You have bragging rights for the state of Oklahoma. Even though you have kicked your brother's teeth in, I don't think that diminishes the fact that it's a rivalry game. Now, if you say that rivalry is dictated by the quality of the series as opposed to that, then listen, that's how you view rivalry games. And in that viewpoint, you're absolutely correct. This would not be a rivalry series. That's the beautiful thing about football. That's the beautiful thing about sports. You could look at two situations differently and come out with different outcomes, both viewpoints being correct. I love that. I do look at this as a rivalry. I do. I think any game, even if it's super lopsided. That Minnesota-Iowa one is another one. It's super lopsided. It's gone heavily in Iowa's favor. So much so that Minnesota hadn't won in Iowa since 1999 or 97, I believe, and they just did it this year for the first time. Almost wild. Almost unheard of, right? So I do like this as a rivalry game. Anything can happen in a rivalry game. But Oklahoma's defense also understands they got to answer the call. Oklahoma understands they have to answer the call, especially after the Kansas game, where that was just an ugly game all around. Just all around. The more I rewatch that game, the more I'm like, man, you left a lot of opportunity on the football field, but you, on both sides, quite frankly, but chiefly the offense. Chiefly the offense. That Kansas rushing attack is dangerous. I said this when Kansas played Texas, and everybody was like, oh, Texas better not slip up against Kansas. And I was one of the people being like, hey, guys, Kansas team isn't bad. Like, Bean is not a bad quarterback. He's seen a lot of college football. He's mobile, and this Kansas rush attack is really good now. And I said the same thing when Oklahoma played them. I did not change my viewpoint on that. I do think Kansas was an underrated football team. I do believe that. Very well coached. Offense is very dangerous in terms of their rushing attack. So I do believe that is good for Oklahoma, coming from the fact that they just played a team that has a dangerous rushing attack, and now you're going to be playing a team that I think Gordon is going to shoulder a lot of the offense for Oklahoma State. I think that helps Oklahoma's defense a little bit, seeing that they just saw a fairly analogous situation in Kansas. Now, Bowman does not have the athleticism of Bean. That's something that should massively benefit Oklahoma. Mark says, haven't seen a weather report, but I'm sure OSU is hoping for a windy afternoon. It's not easy to pass in that stadium when there are strong winds. You're true. You're 100% right there, Mark. And that, I think, also goes into the game plan for Oklahoma State, like I said, where if you're looking at this like a chess match, it would stand to reason that you're looking at your opponent saying, man, you are a brilliant tactician, is Brent Venables, but you're aggressive. I know that if we're talking talent breakdown, you win. But you have a key guy hurt. And if he's not playing, I might be able to bust one or two big plays early that allow me to get something rolling. The problem is, if I don't know that you have enough to keep it rolling. That's the problem. Because I don't think OU's going to be too cute this time. I think they're going to have a path and a destination in mind. Oklahoma's offense against Kansas, they were going on a road trip, but they had no idea where the hell they were going. You ever get in your car and you just start driving? Now, I want you to imagine you start doing that as a cross-country road trip, but you have zero idea where you're going. Every so often, you're just taking random exits. You'll end up somewhere, sure. No doubt about it. Might not be where you want to end up, or you'd hope to end up, That was kind of Oklahoma's offense last week. Just no direction. No direction. I've talked about the veer and shoot several times. The veer and shoot relies on stacking plays, right? Stacking foundational plays, which the jet sweep, in my opinion, is Lebby using a foundational play to be able to get to your end game. When we were on the Hall of Fame podcast with Jason, before we went live, I was talking about, do y'all remember Lincoln Logs? The veer and shoot offense to me is, remember Lincoln Logs, where you first had to build the foundation of the house. And so you had to build east and west before you could build north and south. You had to have a strong base. That's kind of the jet sweeps and stuff in this veer and shoot offense. You're trying to build a base. You had a base very early on. You don't get to level 10 and then say, time to start base building again. That's not to say that you don't run the jet sweep ever again after the first quarter, but there are times, there are places, and you already had a foundation established. So I think Oklahoma is going to come into this game with a direction. And I think even if they get taken off their spot and that direction changes, they're going to be a bit more bullish because they have to be. They have to be. You've lost one game. You can have one loss. That's fine. Because I do think, once again, you would prefer if Kansas didn't have 2 losses. Kansas is not a bad football team. Let's call a spade a spade. It's not a bad football team. It's a good team. It's a good team. But you can't afford another loss. I mean, that's just the simple truth of the college football playoffs in its current capacity. You can't have 2 losses. You have 2 losses, it's done. It's done. Unless everybody starts losing, in which case we have a different conversation. So a key in this game for Oklahoma: be disciplined and use your aggression. But understand that they're going to try and take advantage of that aggression early to try and build a foundation. I just don't see it lasting for 4 quarters. I don't see Oklahoma State being able to have success for 4 quarters against Oklahoma. I just don't. If at the end of the first quarter, this game is close, OU fans listening, do not panic, because honestly, I see that exactly what happens. I think they empty the kitchen sink. They try and take advantage of some of your aggression. It could be close at the end of the first, even if it's at halftime. And this is a fairly close game. Maryland beat. Oh, yeah. I mean, listen, it has its principles. Don't get me wrong. But the way Lebby uses it, I should have been a bit more specific, Mark, because you very fair point. The jet sweep, I don't have an issue with jet sweeps. It's the usage of them and the timing. So fair point. No doubt about it. Yeah, guys, I just don't see it for 4 quarters. I just don't. This Oklahoma defense has shown we will bend in the 20-20, but when we get down to the red zone, it's very tough to break them. Very tough. Very tough. I mean, that goal line stand against Texas is one of the most impressive sequences of football this year. Truly. I just don't see Oklahoma State having the recipe to be able to do this. Now, how is Oklahoma going to be able to weather the storm that Gundy and company are going to throw at them? Well, quite simple. You just stay steady. Stay even keeled, because they're going to throw everything at you early. You stay even keeled. Because when I look at this Oklahoma State team against Kansas, they were pulling out flea flickers on the first drive. I mean, they were pulling out all the stops early. So there's no reason to expect they're not going to pull out everything against Oklahoma. Just stay even. Stay the course. It is a marathon. It is not a sprint. And sometimes college football teams will lose marathons because they try and have sprint offs within the marathon. That's not what this is. This is a marathon. It's 4 quarters. And Oklahoma, I think, is very well equipped to play 4 quarters with Oklahoma State. Styles make matchups. And I just think that the Kansas matchup, even though I had picked Oklahoma to win that game, admittedly, that game is more concerning to me in terms of Styles making matchups against Oklahoma than is this one. And a lot of that relies on the athleticism of Bean. because you have to pull someone. You have to have someone account for him. I just don't see that with Oklahoma State. Give me Oklahoma in this game. I want to talk about Georgia, Missouri, because whenever we talk about Georgia, there's one truth to attacking a Georgia-based defense, to attacking a Nick Saban-based defense. You have to test them deep. You have to, right? Mark, Texas learned that this year. How are you going to beat Saban in Alabama? You better be willing to test them deep, because they're going to play a lot of man. They are going to play a lot of man. It's real hard to beat Alabama running it down their throat. I mean, that's next to an impossible task. It's real hard to beat Georgia running it down their throat, which is why whenever Michigan and Georgia, whenever we think of that matchup, I always was like, he's got to have more to work with in terms of wide receiver talent if they're going to beat Georgia. You got to test them vertically. You're not going to dink and dunk Georgia. That's not going to happen. It's just not. You're not going to dink and dunk Alabama. You're not. Let me rephrase. You can dink and dunk to set up the deep shot, but if your entire offense is based on running and dinking and dunking and ignoring the deep shot, they are going to eat you alive. They are going to eat you alive, and it's going to be ugly. It will get real ugly real quick. I'll put it like this. One of the top offenses in the nation, a offense that dropped 55 points on LSU, was held to 10 points against Alabama. Why? Because Alabama said you're not dinking and dunking. You better go north and south or you're not going anywhere. It gets real tough. I bring this to your attention because Missouri has the recipe. They can attack you north and south. They can. They have the wide receivers. They have the momentum. They have the recipe to attack you north and south. However, and this is a big however, I may be alone in this. And if so, that's fine. And I've already seen people on the channel not agreeing with me on this take, and that's perfectly fine because I understand why people disagree with me here. I don't ever ask to be agreed with. Whether you agree with me or disagree with me is of little consequence, in my opinion. My only ever want on this channel is to be understood. Whether you agree with me or disagree is inconsequential. My end goal is to be able to present an argument and for you to hear the argument and say, I can understand how he gets from point A to point Z logically, whether I disagree or agree. There is a sound argument that makes me at least think about my position and makes me form an opinion. That's my only job here. If you agree with me, I feel great. If you disagree with me, then maybe I'm wrong and I have an opportunity to learn. It's all good. I think that Georgia win over Florida was really impressive. And I know I'm not the biggest on Florida either, but understand this. This was a Georgia team that all year long, so many people have been saying they're going to get caught. They're going to get caught. And then their best player goes down. One of the best players in college football. And the next game they have is in Florida against the Gators. I knew going into that game that was going to be a big game. So I was curious, how do you answer the call? They beat the hell out of Florida. I understand what the score said. Go rewatch the game, and the score doesn't tell a tenth of the call. They beat them bad. Real bad. It wasn't fun to watch. Georgia's good. And as much as I hate to use this argument, not having Brock Bowers could have forced them into playing more form football. And what I mean when I say that is when you have someone so spectacular, you can almost start playing with the assumption of, even if it doesn't work out, Brock will bail us out. Want to know how I know that? Because I just watched Bryce Young at Alabama. And tell me you didn't get the feeling watching Alabama's offensive coordinator, who shall not be named here on this channel. He's like Lord Voldemort, except very real. Tell me you didn't think watching Alabama last year that the offensive coordinator sometimes didn't call plays with the assumption of, we got Bryce Young. He'll bail us out. He'll figure it out. It's Bryce. Kind of looked like sometimes what Georgia would do. Well, they didn't have Brock Bowers. And they had to sit there and ask the question, how are we going to find offense and consistent offense without our best player? Oh boy, did they answer that question. And did they have a lot of answers to give college football? And this is what scares me. They may have just unlocked their offense because they may have just found how many weapons they truly have. That's not to say that they won't be tested versus Missouri. There will be a lot of people picking Missouri to upset Georgia. I don't think that's the craziest pick this year. I don't. They gave Georgia hell last year. I think you can make an argument that this Georgia team isn't as good as last year's Georgia team, and this year's Missouri's team is better than last year's Missouri's team. I think both of those are true. But ladies and gentlemen, after what I saw Georgia do to Florida, and I understand, I said this on Monday, and a lot of people disagreed. They did not think that Florida was all that great. And I hear you. I hear you because I don't have a bunch of marquee wins to point you to for Florida. But what I do have to point you to is a Georgia team that quite frankly has looked like they've been coasting with their best player, sleepwalking. They didn't have their best player in a hostile environment, and they dragged a Power 5 opponent. Dragged them. I was very impressed. I think Georgia sends another message to college football on Saturday against Missouri. This is a very well-coached team. This is a very talented team. And I think that they are going to win the game. I think the line, when we talked about it last night, is at 14. I don't know if I like them to cover. But at the same time, if that offense gets rolling, I don't know how you stop them if you're Missouri. That's going to be a fantastic game. One I really can't wait to watch. I think last game we're going to cover Kansas State, Texas, talking about that game. And look, when I look at this game right here, you're talking about a Kansas State team that is incredibly well coached, but at the same time, I think this game will be close because Texas is still figuring out life absent Quinn Ewers, but they're going to figure it out. Malik is going to be fine. He had some first start jitters. It's all good. What quarterback hasn't made first-year mistakes? It's fine. They have a running game that's really dangerous, does Texas. Jonathan Brooks has been fantastic. Jaden Blue is another name. He's going to be really, really good. But Brooks, I mean, it's the Brooks show this year. And then you have Baxter. I think that this Kansas State game is going to be closer than some people want it to be. It'll be closer than comfort. But ultimately, at the end of the day, I think Texas wins because that defensive front for Texas is very good. And I just think they're better equipped to deal with Kansas State than Kansas State is equipped to deal with Texas. I mean, Brooks is just shy of 1,000 yards. Just shy of 1,000 yards. That being said, we have Kansas State, who is coming off of a big Houston win, coming off of 2 big wins, having beat Texas Tech. They're feeling themselves. I just don't think it's enough. I just don't. I think Texas has more talent. I think that they understand they can play form football, don't do anything sexy, and win this game. Hey, Mars, happy you're in here, man. We're actually just probably about to head out because they're about to start jackhammering right outside my house, and I don't necessarily want to subject y'all to that. So, I mean, look, give me Texas in this game. I think this could be a very realistic prediction, Mars. I don't know that I like Kansas State to score that much, but if we were to modify this 28-20, I like it. But the general theory you're operating under, Mars, I agree with. And Shadow, like, once again, I completely agree. I think this is going to be one of those games where the score is going to show a much closer game than we saw That being said, I just think Texas is going to beat them soundly. If they come out there and Malik starts slinging it, I'm going to be like a kid at Christmas. I'm going to be so happy. I really root for that kid. He's so talented. He's worked so hard. Talking to guys like Texas Homer who are so in tune with that Texas program. I mean, you talk to guys like Homer, Steven with Fanatic Perspective, Nino. They're so in tune with that program. They have connections, for real connections. And you just listen to the kid's work ethic. And he is a worker. He is a grinder, man. And I you just can't do anything but respect it. Respect character like that. KSU would be the first to keep Texas under 30. I think KSU will be the first to keep Texas under 30, Mark. And I think it's just kind of one of those things where Quinn's not there. But listen, if you keep that streak up, that's very impressive. Very impressive. Texas defensive line is stout. Mars says, yes, they are, man. Yes, they are. They're very stout. I also really like Jalen Ford, right? We talk about that all the time, how he and Downs, or not Downs, I'm sorry. Well, Downs is also edge outside linebacker, but in terms of like inside linebacker, butt kiss award winners, Jalen Ford and Stutzman are just so far up in terms of Big 12 linebacker play. I mean, they are playing lights out. I also really like Binda at Texas. I really like watching Binda play. He's a fun player to watch. It's actually kind of crazy, man. The defense at both Oklahoma and Texas has been such a treat to watch in terms of Big 12, right? You don't typically associate that heavy defense because it's such an offensive dominated league, but they've been answering the call. How do you stop offensive domination? You go out and hire great defensive minds. That's why TCU is always such a treat to watch in the Big 12. You had Gary Patterson. Quentin, my man, obligatory $2 super chat. Thank you for the donation, Quentin. You still have provided me with one of my favorite moments all season, a moment that truly gives me a little bit of joy, man. Anytime I think about it, I need to give you a $2 super chat because that genuinely, man, made me laugh so hard what you said to Chris that day. I still crack up about it. It's so funny. Yeah, if Texas and KSU run like they want to, the first half will fly by, and I think both teams have. Yeah. Mark, I'm interested in hearing your score prediction because you are right. I had kind of forgotten that Texas hasn't been kept under 30, which is wild. I think Kansas State could, but I also don't. If they do, it's not going to be this thing of like, oh, see, that offense is susceptible. I think it's going to be more of a thing where it's like, oh, well, y'all didn't have Quinn. I don't see Kansas State stopping the run. I don't either, Mars. I don't either. I don't, being very honest. And even then, guys, we have to realize Sark should cook something up. He'll have something. He still has Worthy. He has Cook. He has Whittington. He has all these weapons. He'll have something. Malik will put up something. He'll make that Kansas State defense think. That's just what Sark's going to do. Right? That's just the nature of it. But it's a good thing they have that. It's a good thing they have that running game. Okay, Quentin, you think this is going to be a bit more lopsided than I have it? I think this game will be close on scoreboard. I think this will be one of those games where we talk about it after, saying Texas really imposed their will, but it was closer on the scoreboard than the game really said. I think we're looking at like an 8-point game. But I will say, y'all go out 34-17. That's going to be a good win. Real good win. Especially no quit. That'd be a great win. No doubt your rushing attack is dangerous. Really like Brooks. I like Blue. I like Baxter. You got a lot of good running backs. That's certainly not a question. Yeah, I like Texas in this game. Ultimately, I think we're barreling towards a rematch, ladies and gentlemen, in the Big 12 championship. I'm always overly optimistic. I love it, man. I love it. That's what being a fan is all about, bro. I love it. I'm not sure yet, but this game is concerning because of KSU's red zone defense. Hey, that's a great point, Mark. That's a great point. That's a really good point, man. That's a hell of a point. Yeah, that's I'd actually kind of forgotten about that. That's a great point, Mark. Texas's red zone offense has been odd all year. That's a really good point. Luckily, you hope you just don't need to score only in the red zone. You hope you start spreading them out. I'll go 30-27 Texas. Okay, so you keep the 30. I love it. I love it. I love it. Score outside the red zone. We're good. I'm like you, Quentin. Okay, so we struggle scoring in the red zone. How about we just park our offense at the 21, right? We tell all of our running backs, don't you dare break the 20-yard line. You sit your ass right back here and we score from afar. If it works, it's not dumb, right? If it works, it works. I do very much well think this though, Mars. I've said it. I said it probably before Oklahoma played Texas. Actually, there's no probably. I said it before Oklahoma played Texas. Because before that game, I'd already arrived at the conclusion, right? Like, Oklahoma's a very good team. How good, we're going to find out. They're a very good team. But before that Texas game, I'd already arrived at the conclusion, watching some of the other Big 12 teams, I think we're in for a rematch of this game. I think OU and Texas are the two best teams in the Big 12. I do. I think it's going to be an amazing rematch. In Jerry World, that'd be wild. I might have to go to that one. All right, guys, we're going to go ahead and get out of here. I will be on Bleacher Report 6 o'clock this evening with Kyle Henderson. Really excited to do this collab. We're going to be breaking down Alabama LSU, talking about some bold takes, talking about how Alabama controls their destiny and why that's a good thing. Outside of that, you can catch me tomorrow once again on the Bleacher Report app as myself, Steven of Fanatics Perspective, Nino of Nino's Sports Corner, and Jay will not be with us. He is on a cruise, but he will be with us in spirit. We're going to be doing our college football pick'em show. I'll probably be releasing a video or two in the afternoon, and then we'll see you on Saturday, where I'll probably be either streaming after the early morning games. We'll make some videos, but either way, we'll see each other on Saturday, and then right back here on Monday for our recap of the weekend. Until then, enjoy you some Shady Mile. A special thank you to Shady Mile. Enjoy your weekend. Be safe, and we'll see you soon. That's it. See you.